Because one thing about it, we want to also look at Abraham as a leader, as a master. See, because you might look at that and say, yeah, she called him master. Yeah, I should be called master. Should you? Are you like Abraham? We see how Sarah was, and we see clearly, yeah, you see how if you want to be a daughter of Sarah, how you're supposed to be in submission. She called her husband master. But are you worthy to be called master? Are you operating like Abraham? Let's pick it up at verse 17. It said, and the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. And it's one thing, he knew something about Abraham. Let's find out what it was. He said, for I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. See, he knew that Abraham was going to lead his household. The question is, are you leading your household? And in order to lead your household, you know what you can't be? Afraid. You cannot be afraid of what your wife may think. You can't be afraid of any of that. You can't be afraid about disappointing her. Why? Because you need to understand, what did the Lord give you to do? Keep his commandments. What else did he give you? He gave you purpose. If you have that and stick with that, it don't matter what anybody else may say. But now he said, for I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. Let's pick it up in Joshua, the 24th chapter. And this is what men need to do. They need to run their households uprightly. This is Joshua, the 24th chapter, and verse 14. We're going to read this charge that was given to the children of Israel by that captain, Joshua. This is Joshua 24 and verse 14. It reads as follows. Now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth. Right? So he's charging the people on how they're supposed to serve the Lord. So you're supposed to, and we know that the truth is his word. So you must be sincere in your approach unto him, and you must worship him as is written in spirit and in truth. He said, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood. The other side of the flood is the other side of the Euphrates River. He's talking about Abraham's forefathers. Terah and those individuals, they worship falsely. He was called out of that false worship, out of Ur the Chaldees. He said, put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood and in Egypt. And he said, and serve ye the Lord. Right? So that's what you should do. It said in verse 15, and if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom ye will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell. He said, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So what did Joshua do? Joshua made a decision about his household. This is what, just like Abraham did, this is what men should do. You determine the spiritual direction of your household. Don't matter what anybody else thinks. And you need to stop worrying about what anybody else thinks. You need to stop capitulating to what anybody else thinks. It is on you, quite frankly, to set the order. Because I'm emphasizing men. Somebody said, why he keep focusing on men in particular? Because men are the ones that are supposed to set the order. If men don't set the order, there will be no order. And that's what we have in our households, disorder and dysfunction. If you don't set the order, there will be no order. So you must set the spiritual direction of your household. And what did Joshua say? He said, he told the people of Israel, the children of Israel, listen, you need to make a decision to do what you're supposed to do. I'm telling you to serve the Lord. He said, but I know what me and mine are going to do. We are going to serve the Lord. And that's what a man has to do, because you are the spiritual head. You are, Numbers 30, you are actually the protection. That's how he set you up, to be the spiritual head and the protector, not just of children, but even of the woman. And that's when we look at Adam, that's what he failed to do. This is Numbers, the 30th chapter, and we'll pick it up at verse 2. We know that a man is supposed to be the spiritual head when we look at vows. This is Numbers 30, and we'll pick it up at verse 2. Numbers 30 and verse 2 says, if a man vow a vow unto the Lord or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth. He said, but now notice what he said. Now that's a man, period. But notice what he said if it's a woman in her father's house. He said, if a woman also vow a vow unto the Lord and bind herself by a bond, being in her father's house in her youth, and her father hear her vow, and her bond wherewith she hath bound her soul, and her father shall hold his peace at her, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand. Notice there's no such stipulation with the man. Verse 5 says, but if her father disallow her in the day that he heareth, not any of her vows or of her bonds wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand, and the Lord shall forgive her because her father disallowed her. So a daughter in her father's house can basically, she can make a vow unto the Lord. If the father hit a vow in that day and he doesn't disannul it, then she has to keep it. But if he hears it and doesn't agree with it, he can invalidate that vow, and it's to the Lord, and the Lord will forgive her of it, even though she made a vow to it. Why? Because he is a spiritual head. It was never the case that you would have all these women out here without a covering. Because when you don't have quite frankly, when you don't have a man, you do not have a spiritual covering. People talk about Jesus is my covering. Read that. Why don't you go ahead and find that in the text? You can't do it. So you need a man as your covering, that's your protection, and then and provision. And you notice at the same time, what you will see many women complaining today about is what? These men out here, when somebody get attacked on the subway or they walking down the street, what are these men supposed to be protecting me? He's not your covering. He's technically not your covering. Your husband is supposed to be your protection. When you are in your father's house, your father is your protection, and then you go right from being in your father's house. It's like, don't pass go, don't collect $200. You go right into your husband's, under his cover. That's how it's supposed to be. Let's pick it up real quick. Let's go to the book of Ruth real quick. We're in the book of Ruth. And so we'll come right back here. I just want to read this about covering. This is Ruth. And I'm going to pick it up at verse 9. The Lord had it in every way. Here we see in the liberate law, the duty of brothers, a woman not supposed to be uncovered. This foolishness that they tell all the women independent, throw your hands up at me. The same women singing that they got a husband at home. Like, that's not how it's supposed to be. He didn't make it to you once you're supposed to be protected. The Lord have it, you see time and time again, that the woman is protected. But let's pick it up at Ruth, the 3rd chapter, and verse 8. When you're ready, go ahead and read.
And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet.
Now this is Boaz. Boaz was wealthy. Okay, Boaz more than likely had another wife, just a side note. Like this man up in age with all his wealth, just I'm waiting on Ruth. You'll get married, I'm waiting on Ruth. No, he had maidens. But now let's pick it up at verse 9. Go ahead and read.
And he said, who art thou?
Because that's Ruth coming, she's asking him to fulfill the liberate law. Go ahead and read.
And she answered, I am Ruth thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy shirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman.
So what is she asking him? She's asking him to be a covering, be a protection, and fulfill the duty of brothers, which would mean she would take her as a wife and raise up seed in the deceased descendant's name. But what is she asking? Spread your skirt over me. When you read in Ezekiel, when the Lord is talking about his bride and how he brought her into into prominence and he spread his skirt over her. That's protection. That's what a man is for a woman. Protection. Let's pick it up at, let's go back to Numbers 30. We're in Numbers 30 because we read about a woman, a daughter in her father's house. And that's another thing. You should be monitoring everybody in that house and where they're headed spiritually and directing them. That's what you're supposed to be as a man. So when you talk about, when she called him master, you be like, yeah, that sounds good. I like my wife to call me master too. Man, do you know the responsibility that come along with that? And what you actually supposed to be doing? This is bigger than you just go, well, I go to work every day. It's bigger than that, actually. Have you produced the conditions in your household where everybody can serve the Lord as they should, and when they get off, do you have the steel? Do you have the footing to where you're going to direct them in the proper way? Because that automatically is going to bring contention. But if you worry solely about what the Lord said and your purpose, it don't matter if it's contention. It don't matter. Let's pick it up at Numbers, the 30th chapter and verse 6. Numbers 30 and verse 6. Because here, if a married, we're going to see if a married woman makes a vow. And I'm pointing this out because this is the order. The man is the head. This is showing you that the man is the head. Spiritually even. Verse 6. Go ahead and read.
And if she had it all in husband, when she vowed or uttered all out of her lips,
go ahead,
wherewith she bound her soul, and her husband heard it, and held his peace at her in the day that he heard it, then her vow shall stand, and her bonds wherewith she bound her soul shall stand.
Go ahead.
But if her husband disallowed her on that day that he heard it, then he shall make her vow which she vowed, and that which she uttered with her lips, whether she bound her soul of none effect, and the Lord shall forgive her.
You see that? So now if her husband disallowed her vow, he heard it in the day she made it, he didn't say anything, he can't go back 10 years later and say, I don't like that. No, it's that same day. If he hears it, she has, and he doesn't say anything, it'll stand. But if he does not agree, he can disallow her on the day that he heard it, and the Lord will forgive her. That same stipulation is not made for a man, letting you know the position of the man as spiritual head of the woman. And you could, for whatever anybody's told you, whatever you may think you know, you understand, you talking about you don't need a man? No, you need a man. Men need a woman. Don't get it twisted. I'm just saying, that's your spiritual head, that's your spiritual covering, that's your protection and provision. Should be. Let's pick it up at Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter. What?
I got it.
You can stay over here. Go ahead, man. Help them do what you got to do. I appreciate it. Yeah, don't worry about it. I got it. Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter. Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, and verse 5. See, this great responsibility. It's more than you. So I go to work every day. yeah, that's good. That's just part of it, though. Right? Because even when you actually think about it, if you actually think about a man and what he's doing, when you read Paul, he's talking about the one that don't take care of his own household. He's worse than the infidel. He wasn't even just talking. That wasn't talking about a man in his own house, like with his wife and kids. That was actually talking about a widow that was one of his relatives. That, hey, you need to take care of her. Because that's what a man is. This mind right here. I'm taking care of them. That's what that is. That's what a man should be doing. But now that don't necessarily apply if you're not under that covering. And you should not expect that protection or provision. Why should somebody risk it all because you and mess around and die here in the streets when they got a woman at home and kids at home they got to take care of? That's the reality of the situation. So people, because we have put our women in a precarious situation. But now let's pick it up at Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, and verse 5. Because it is on the man to protect and provide, to be the spiritual head of his wife, but also of his children. Growing up in a Christian church, what you saw, a lot of men didn't go to church. And the wives got the kids up, took them to church oftentimes. The wife was the one doing things. He worried about what new game coming on. That's what he was worried about, oftentimes. Not in every case, but in a lot of cases. But now you have a duty as a man to direct even your children spiritually. This is Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, and verse 5. It says, behold, I have taught, now this is Moses speaking. He said, behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither ye go to possess it. He goes on to tell you to keep, therefore, and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. What is these laws, statutes, commandments? He said, we shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. See, we were special when we were dealing with the Most High. When we turned our back unto him, we became just what we are today, a laughing stock as a people. And we can sit here and try to lie to ourselves about what we are and black power and black excellence. Where exactly? That's a t-shirt. Where are we being excellent as a people? Is it because we are inferior to some other people? No. We have turned our back on the Lord. And we are in a very peculiar situation. Unlike everybody else, he manifested himself unto us directly. We went into covenant with him, and when we disobeyed in our rebellion, he cast us out of his house like a rebellious wife. And we went off just like a woman with no protection. That's how we are right now. So when you walk around, see, man, they killing us in the street, they doing this and that. No justice, no peace. You ain't gonna have justice or peace because you ain't got no covering. And that's the same thing for a woman without covering.